So y- there's a guy who is the mayor of South Fulton. And we talked about him a couple months ago on the podcast because he'd sort of made news. They locked him out of the building. I won't go into the details of that, but he texted me or last week and said, "Hey, I'm talking about civil asset forfeiture city council meeting. Would you come?" He says, "I have got all this data from our city clerk about several hundred open civil asset forfeiture cases that are aging. Some of them are 7 or 8 years old. And I want to introduce legislation." And so we talked about some of his options, and he was really interested because I had told him years ago about how our mayor in Holly Springs had issued an executive order banning the use of civil asset forfeiture in the city of Holly Springs. But what I turned him on to in our conversation was, what you could really do if you want to be a leader on this issue at the city level is you could get an ordinance passed that simply says if somebody's found not guilty, that they are made whole on the back end and they get their property back. Because if you're found not guilty of the criminal charges, you should get your property back. And as we know, the most egregious line in all of state code says that if you're found not guilty in your criminal proceedings, it doesn't absolve you of the civil process and still losing your property. And that process, just to repeat for those who don't know, I know our audience really knows this because I talk about it all the time, but it's a lower evidentiary standard. You don't have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You do not have the right to remain silent if you go and try to defend your property because the case is not against you as an individual. It's in rem against the property. And so the property has to be defended against these allegations. And the evidentiary standard is a 50% plus one. It's a preponderance of the evidence, which means we think this was related to criminal activity. We don't have to prove it. We're going to take your stuff. And so I went, and there are times when I feel like this is an artifact of me working on this for a decade now, that I have overcome objections, that those should no longer really be objections anymore. And one of those things is that this is an anti-law enforcement measure. I reject wholesale that anybody who wants to see the concept of innocent until proven guilty restored in our country, in our state, and in our cities, in this state, think that this is an anti-law enforcement measure. It is not. It simply is not, especially if it's tied to a conviction, because it doesn't change the way law enforcement would do their jobs. I was surprised when one of the councilwomen decided to make this about attacking law enforcement, and I was not able to respond. So, Councilwoman Willis, if you're out there, what you have to understand is that you can be safe and you can support the police and still be in favor of civil asset forfeiture reform. There were two women who tag teamed on the mayor, and one of them basically said, "You have an anti-police attitude and you need to stop with this nonsense." And the other one was far more measured in her take and how she responded. And there was just a lot of what I felt like unanswered questions where they muddied the water sufficiently where that may not happen in the city of South Fulton. Now, I'm not silly enough to think that this is a number one podcast in the city of South Fulton. But if you are a resident of that city, your mayor right now, in spite of all the other stuff that's going on around him, he's actually fighting for something really good here. And I will work with anybody, regardless of their political ideology, if they agree with me that we in this country should not be punished for criminal activity unless we are convicted of a crime. And that's what civil asset forfeiture does. It punishes you without even being convicted. And Councilwoman Willis asked me, "Why didn't your bills pass?" And I was very honest. I said, "Well, the most popular elected official in every county is a sheriff. And the Sheriff's Association came out against me. And I had the benefit, being the leader on this, of only representing 1/5 of one county. But when my friends from South Georgia, who represent 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 counties, and they're going up against 7 of the most popular elected officials, and this is a kitty of money that they can use for anything they want, it's hard politically to get this done." And she cut me off in the middle of telling her an example of how it's been abused and said, "I got enough information from you. I'm totally opposite on this issue. This is an attack on law enforcement." And then I wasn't able to respond. So here's my response. Civil asset forfeiture, the way it's used today, is actually a detriment to the way the public views police, regardless of the community that you're in. Because the government has enabled the police to use this, but it's not the police's fault. I never have been mad at any police officer when they tell me how effectively they've used civil asset forfeiture. Never. The only people I get upset with are the people who are elected, who are the policymakers, who don't embrace this constitutional American promise that you're innocent until proven guilty. It's not about knocking on the cops. It's about knocking on people like you, because you're the one who can do something about it. And you can keep your community safe while honoring the police officers who put their lives on the line every day to make sure that we live in a safe community. These things are not paired. And for people to continue to spread this false notion that the American promise of innocent until proven guilty is somehow a knock on cops is beyond the pale. It's across the line, and it needs to be refuted at every opportunity. And I didn't get the opportunity to do that there, but I'm doing it right now.